Today I wanted to talk about the concept of GRAIL dolls and just discuss what makes dolls GRAIL dolls and why we have this kind of understanding of a doll as being a holy grail of sorts in our collection. So what is a grail anyway? I'd say that every collector or every collecting hobby has its kind of holy grail item that the collector will strive to possess, even though the item in question might be very, very hard to obtain. It might be out of production or very, very rare, and there might only be a few of said item available. But that aside, everyone can have their own individual grail item or holy grail for the collection. And that doesn't necessarily have to be something that is rare or hard to obtain. It could just be a common item. So for lots of people, the rarity of the item isn't really necessarily such a big important factor. But it's important to see that some people may strive to own an item just because it is rare or just because it is so hard to get, and that it elevates the collection to a certain status once said item has been obtained. Also, we have to see that collecting is very individualistic, and people will also go after grails for emotional, personal reasons because they have a special connection with that kind of item, because maybe it was one of the first things they encountered when they entered a hobby, or maybe because the item just holds a high value to them on a personal level. So that is the loose concept of the grail, explained to a certain extent. So true to its historical origins, the Holy Grail, as it was used in the Last Supper and said to be imbued with a certain mysticism and renown, for lack of a better word, similarly, a Holy Grail of a collection can be equally as elusive, if not unattainable. For if it were, would it then still be the Holy Grail? Would it still be that special? But that's just one interpretation. Coming back to the BJD hobby, so for most people, myself included, a grail doll is simply a doll that you've longed for a long time, that once you obtain will elevate your collection to a certain status of completeness or personal significance. And even though they can be hard to obtain, it is not necessarily the case that a grail doll will be the last doll you ever buy. For this reason, I think it's important to realize that the status of Holy Grail doll can change over time, because the doll hobby is ever evolving, and so are you as a collector within it. And also, there are many, many sculpts being produced every year, and you never know when next you might fall in love with a sculpt that will become your next Grail doll. And exactly this fuzziness of the term Grail doll, the fact that the title of Grail doll can change over time, can swap hosts, if you will, that interests me. So I would like to tell you about 3 sculpts that in the past I considered to be grail dolls for me personally, but came to realize that they were not going to be that kind of a doll for me, and so I revoked that title of grail doll from them because I moved on in the hobby. And then I would like to discuss or share with you my 3 present grail dolls that I consider to be grail dolls for me at this point in the hobby, because as we know, time is a relative construct, and that I think now, with the years of experience I've gained in the hobby, are much more deserving of the title of grail doll. The first doll that I ever considered to be a grail doll for me can be probably seen as a very typical grail doll instance. It was a SOOM monthly doll, and it was the sculpt Nephelin, the mother of dragon, I think, as it was called back then. And she was a fantasy doll. She came with horns and beautiful outfit, and I think even fantasy parts. I think the legs were like dragon legs. I'm using these a lot, I'm sorry. What drew me to her was, of course, the fact that she was associated with dragons, and I'm equally a mother of dolls and dragons. So I really, really liked that part about her. I also liked how serene she looked. She just looked like this kind of otherworldly beauty. At least that's what she embodied, and I was just really drawn to that. Unfortunately, I was immediately met with a certain amount of disappointment when I realized that the order period for her had long gone by the time I entered in the BJD hobby. So that immediately elevated her as being unobtainable, at least for the moment, or at least until she would pop up on the marketplace. And as these limited sculpts go, being only available for a limited time and at a limited quantity, the prices are pretty horrendous sometimes. I think subconsciously, when I then chose my first doll to order, which was a Doll's Own Tulip back then, I was kind of trying to capture that same feeling that the Nephelin gave me. But once I actually got my first doll, I did go in a completely different direction as a hobbyist, and very quickly I was able to put the SOOM doll behind me and write it off as not actually having been a Grail doll, or at least just having had that title of Grail doll for a little while, but in the end not really having that kind of appeal to me anymore, because of the fact that I liked it for the full set. And knowing what I know now, being that I'm very much more a customizer than a collector of full set dolls, I don't think that the Nephelin would have had great longevity in my collection if I would have been able to get my hands on her. And actually very recently, I think like a year ago, I did see a Nephelin on the marketplace for a fairly reasonable price, because I mean, granted she is a bit older now, but just noticed also for myself that I had no more attachment to her, so that chapter was very quickly written and done. The next doll that I considered a Grail doll for a long time, just because I spent so much mental effort trying to figure out how I could make it work for my collection, that it just swelled into this kind of Grail-like unattainable thing. And it was the Simply Divine Harlequin head by Stein Sculpture. And for a good couple of months, in like the second year of me being in the hobby, I was really racking my brains of how I could make it into a hybrid and make it work within my collection. And I considered many different options. I did a ton of research, and I even made a video on the Harlequin head, basically expressing why I had to let the sculpt go now, because it just wasn't beneficial to me anymore to think about how I could make it work, because if you really have to force it so much, it's probably a doomed cause. Granted, every doll needs a bit of work until it gets to the point where you want it, but the whole process should come naturally, and you shouldn't have to force attachment just because you think the sculpt is really cool, if you know what I mean. So yeah, eventually I had to just see that it wasn't going to be for me, and I had to move on. And so I did. And the final doll that I had to sacrifice as being my Grail doll is actually a doll I did end up owning for a while. And I also made a video on it back in the day when I ordered him, and that was my Feeple 65 Rogue. It was a doll that I waited 9 months for. Fairyland was having, I think, a little bit of a order crisis when they released them Feeple 60 Moa lines, and then like they were really, really blowing up, and they had a huge backlog of orders, and it was a whole ordeal, at least the way I remember it back in the day. And around that time I also ordered the Feeple 65 Rogue from a local dealer. And it took so bloody long for the doll to get here that by the time it did, and I ended up starting to work with the doll to try and get it to where I wanted it to be and try to like apply my vision I had for the doll, that the spark had just kind of fizzled out, honestly. Don't get me wrong, gorgeous doll, and I was really happy to have him for a while, because now I know that that kind of doll is just not for me. I just noticed that the kind of male sculpts I like more are just the more realistic ones, which is why I very quickly got a Dolce doll afterwards and was super happy with that. I did try my best. He got 2 different wigs, he got 3 different face-ups, he got a set of custom clothes, but at the end of the day it just didn't click, and I ended up selling him after like having him for I think at least a year, I can't remember. And even though I did consider Rogue to be a Grail doll, I never regretted selling him, and I never since then have been drawn to similar sculpts again. So there you go. I've just noticed that I've gotten very rambly with this video, so I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter now. Currently I do have a few dolls on my wish list for the future, and I think 2 or 3 of them can be considered a Grail doll. The very first one, which I think is definitely a Grail doll at this point in time, maybe that will change, is the, let me see if I can pronounce this correctly, La Légende de Temps Isidore. Isidore. Cast the ring in the fire! LLT Isidore, basically. Definitely a doll that has the title of Grail doll right now because the LLT dolls are very expensive. They're only released at certain points in the year, and then they'll only have 1 or 2 sculpts available for a limited time, and the price point of these dolls is also quite high. It's significantly higher than any of the dolls that I've ever had in the past. Only time will tell if I can maybe attain him secondhand somewhere, or if he does get released anytime soon, if I will then maybe buy him on layaway. But yeah, he does kind of have the Grail doll title because he's so far away from me right now, that I kind of just, yeah, I'm feeling the mysticism. Second doll that I would love to own at some point, but have high doubts that I will ever be able to get my hands on it, is the Fairyland Nanuri 2014 event head. Fun fact, I actually was in possession of the Feeple 60 version of the same sculpt. It was called Feeple 60 Nanuri 2014, and I had that for a while, and also I tried to make it work. It didn't. I sold it. That was that. But the MNF 14 Nanuri has always been a doll which I've admired. It's kind of like the Sion, where you could only get it as an event head, as an additional option if you ordered a certain amount of stuff from Fairyland. And now that so many years have passed since its initial release, it's really, really hard to get it anywhere. I mean, the 2 listings that maybe pop up on the marketplace every now and then will then have just the head at a ridiculously high price, and you have to be really, really lucky to get it at a reasonable price. Yeah, so at the recording of this video, I have seen listings for the head range anywhere between $600 to $800 just for the head. Yeah. So either I'll have to get really, really lucky at some point, or I'll have to somehow get one if they ever make a re-release of like old event heads, which would be awesome. Let's just say that that would be the most awesome thing if Fairyland ever did that. Just make a special event release, but with like the 5 top sculpts that they've ever had. Definitely the Valentine's Day event heads, like the Sion and the Nanuri and the Love head, what was it called? And if that ever happens, count me in. I'm going to be right there. I'm going to be ordering that Nanuri 2014. I'm going to be getting the satire legs to go along with it, and it's going to be awesome. But until then, I just have to hope and pray that I might be in a position one day to get a Nanuri from the marketplace for a semi-reasonable price. But also I'm not looking to expand my mini collection anytime soon, so it's like just kind of like there. Would be nice to have at some point. Would love to have it at some point, but don't know if it's ever going to happen. And the final doll that for me right now has the title of Grail doll is Lillycat Cerisedolls Ellana in purple skin. Now the Ellana sculpt has been one that I've been looking out for many, many years now, ever since I think it was released, or ever since I discovered Lillycat. I've been really drawn to the Ellana sculpt. Being an independent sculptor, Lillycat does not always have all her dolls available, especially not in all skin tones, and currently the Ellana is also only available via the secondhand marketplace. And I missed out on the release where she was available in the purple skin tone, so now it's just kind of pure luck if you can find an Ellana in the purple skin tone. I really love the proportions of the doll. I would love to support Lillycat as an independent sculptor. I have considered also just getting one in the other skin tones because they are more readily available, but it is still that purple skin tone that really draws me to it. And ever since I sold my soul doll, Devonia, who was in purple skin too, I have kind of had the itch and the urge to own another fantasy skin colored doll. And I think if I would own one, then it would be probably Lillycat Cerisedolls Ellana. But as you see, because I'm so specific with the skin tone and my preference for this doll, I don't know if I can get it anytime soon, or if I can get it for a reasonable price. But then again, all hope is not lost. Maybe they'll come back someday. I've been talking for so long that the weather has decided to change again and give us some sunshine. So yay, everyone clap for that. That is it. That is all I have to say about Grail dolls. Can you believe it? I have thought about this for a long time, but I don't think I've ever made a video specifically just dedicated to talking about Grail dolls. But I think it's such an interesting topic because it's so universal, a concept, yet so individual somehow to everyone. Do you guys have a Grail doll? Let me know in the comments down below, and also, if you'd like, share what your thoughts and opinions are on Grail dolls and what you consider to be worthy of the title of Grail doll. Leave a like if you like this video, subscribe if you'd like to stick around, and as always, fare thee all well, and I'll see you all next time. Bye guys. That's it. Well, I'm glad my old tennis trophies are still worth something.